Why don't you feed him? Can you do that?
Of course I can. Will, look at this. How old is he? Like a day old? 2 days old? Oh, he's a smart one, isn't he? What are you gonna name him?
I don't know.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 201 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always joined by my fellow co-hosts Chris and Dave, and also we welcome our special guest for this series, Charlie Brigden. How are you all?
Good evening, folks.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Charlie's way more upbeat than we are.
He's waving.
Well, it's not Tim Burton this week.
Well, I have to say, I'm so much more positive about doing this than I was
Yes,
last
we're on the
week.
upward trajectory at last.
We are. So, let's get into that in a moment. What are we covering tonight, Becca?
Tonight we are reviewing Rise of the Planet of the Apes, aka Rock to Twitter, starring James Franco, Andy Serkis, David Oyelowo, who's I've put a comma in between his names, I don't know why, John Lithgow, Brian Cox, Tom Felton, in his first breakout role since Harry's Not It, with a score by Patrick Doyle, script by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, directed by Rupert Wyatt, and released in 2011.
When you said you stuck a comma in his name, do you mean like David Oyelowo, like he's Irish?
David, Oyelowo.
Oh, right, okay.
I didn't mean to do that. So
I thought you meant. I actually thought
don't
you
mess up
meant.
his name.
I thought you meant an apostrophe after the O. I thought you meant like he was Irish.
Oh, yeah. No.
Um,
Yeah, starring David Oyelowo. There we are.
It would be good. I don't know how to pronounce his name anyway because I've never heard it said. So
He's an internationally famous actor, you know. He's also got a new film out this festive season.
For those who don't know, because you'll have seen him as playing Martin Luther King in things like Selma, and he's been in lots of other things.
That's an amazing film. If you can check that film out, I highly recommend it.
It is on Netflix at the moment, I believe. But the point to make with it is he started off on British TV in Spooks. That's very
another classic series.
What age is he? Where is he? Let's have a look.
He's 44.
Yeah, too old to start. Although he hasn't aged. 44. I just thought, Christ, that's knocking on a bit. Then I realised that's my age. Okay, fair enough.
Dave, oh my gosh, I didn't know. What's your secret?
We were just talking before we hit record that Becca can't believe any landmark date or like anniversary or anything. So whatever it is, whether it's episode 5 or it's my birthday, she's like stunned every time.
I'm permanently surprised. No, I just think it's amazing. Little old us. We've got other sort of bigger podcasts that we're all take influence from, and that we love listening to. And we just say little old us still going for 5 years, and it's like, what? But no, I can obviously believe it. It's more for comedy value these days. But yeah, I just think it's amazing.
So looking into the film we're covering tonight, I did my sort of typical look around. I immediately, for some ridiculous reason, got Rupert Wyatt mixed up with Tom Hooper. I think it's Tom Hooper, the guy who made The King's Speech and Les Miserables and stuff. I actually think he's quite a poor director in a lot of ways, but maybe we can cover that if we ever cover a film from his canon.
Well, I don't know. I mean, how can you say that when he's made a spectacle like Cats?
I forgot he made that, to be fair.
This was amazing. So how is he so rubbish?
I still haven't seen Cats, so
I haven't. I saw the trailer. That was enough.
Haunted your memory.
But I watched Les Miserables, and he had all these beautiful sets built and incredible locations and wonderful costumes. and then sort of shove the camera 4 inches from the actors' faces at all times. I just think he's quite a poor director when you look back at the stuff he's done.
Or you did like seeing, up somebody's nose. No.
Didn't do. He might have done The Damned United, which was a bit more of a TV film. The thing about Brian Clough, and I enjoyed that. But
that was a good film, though.
I think he fundamentally is normally the worst thing about the film
It's
he's
top
making.
1%.
But I was looking on top of that, and immediately did what I've been doing ever since the series started. Really, is go straight to the sort of cinematographer and the composer. The cinematographer was Andrew Lesnie. Now, Andrew Leslie's best known for the Tolkien films, which are all beautiful. So he's very heavily in the extended edition, the appendices for those films. Also known, so he also worked with him on King Kong as well. And so that's what he's best known for. I did not realise he'd passed away.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was quite recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was okay.
He died at the age of 59.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. So that's worth mentioning. But obviously the visuals of this film are supervised by a guy who did all 6 of the Peter Jackson Tolkien films. And I think it's fair to say they're all incredibly good-looking films. As for the score, I looked up this guy and immediately thought, I don't know how much of his stuff I know. Patrick Doyle, Charlie can interrupt on this, seems to have worked with Kenneth Branagh a lot.
Yeah, he's pretty much Kenneth Branagh's to go to. He's with Brian De Palma as well. He did the score for Carlito's Way, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So because of Kenneth Branagh, he did the music for Thor.
Yes.
And he's
I've come across him before.
So he's done some kind of Disney films as well, and he did one of the Harry Potters.
The Quaron one.
The Goblet of Fire.
He's worked with him a couple of times by the look of it. He did the Great Expectations film with him. And he's worked with Ang Lee, Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
But I didn't. The name didn't stick out to me. That's more a reflection of my ignorance than his record, because you can see so many films there, you know.
Oh, sure,
He didn't stick out to me. But he started as an actor. He was in Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Those were sort of the things about I wanted to sort of add about the people behind the scenes. But it feels, and I guess the only other thing I wanted to say in the build up to the sort of background to the film is this is cheaper than the Tim Burton film, despite the fact that it's got, despite the fact it's all sort of mocapped CG, and there are by definition CGI effects in almost every shot. This is 93 million against 10 years earlier 100 million. So you can see they're sort of hedging their bets a little bit. They've got to spend some money because they've got to make it look okay. But this is conservative for a blockbuster, and it took nearly $500 million in response.
Yeah, because it seemed kind of. I felt that watching it, like it kind of wasn't going for like huge, massive set pieces, or it kind of like reserved it, But I think it's for the film's benefit, really, because it kind of feels like it's more about relying on storytelling rather than and character arcs rather than like, look at this big set pieces, we've got to have this big money shot, kind of thing. It's I think it makes the film better for it, actually.
Yeah, going quickly back to the people behind it, the editor as well. It had two editors, Conrad Buff and Mark Goldblatt. Mark Goldblatt is basically, he did Terminator and T2, and he's done a load of stuff. Well, he's just he edited Commando, the Terminator, Rambo, or the second Rambo.
I didn't know that.
He did some stuff on RoboCop. He did T2, The Last Boy Scout. Did some stuff on Tombstone. Did True Lies, Starship Troopers, Showgirls. So it looks like he went on to go for Michael Bay as well. And Conrad Buff is kind of an assistant director who he worked on Titanic. I think he worked back a while ago as an assistant on Return of the Jedi. But he ended up, I think he got an Oscar for Titanic, and as being kind of like a a co or an assistant editor on a fair amount of stuff like Ghostbusters and The Abyss, and again The Last Boy Scout and things like that.
His record is actually there's some incredible films in his record. Looking at it,
Yeah.
From some of the Star Wars films to E.T., well, basically to Poltergeist. When we're looking at Ghostbusters, The Abyss, yeah, he's obviously popular with James Cameron.
Yeah, I think he started off in like the visual effects department.
Oh yeah, I've not got whether he edited those or not.
Yeah.
But Titanic, yeah, mind you, everyone on Titanic won an Oscar.
Well, that's
Yeah,
true.
that film was just Oscar winning across the board.
Best cheese butties.
Yeah.
Little scene film, which I saw at the cinema at the time, just for an evening out, was Arlington Road.
Wow.
That's a Jeff Bridges sort of Tim Robbins film, and it's really good. It's just mention it. It's about a guy who sort of lectures on sort of terrorism and things like that, and comes to believe he's living next door to a terrorist.
Yeah, living next door to a bomber. Yeah, that's a good film.
Yeah, it's a good film. Okay,
Tim Robbins is quite good in whatever he does, really, doesn't he? He gives good performances.
Yeah. And he has to play quite an ambiguous performance there.
Yeah, either or. Could go
You're not
both ways.
supposed to really know what he is or isn't.
No.
But
He's really good.
in terms of this film, I don't remember any of the build-up to it. I went to see it, and I went to see it early, so I must have been keen, but I don't remember much of the build-up. I can't remember whether I was anticipating this, excited for it, whether it was much hyped. I really don't know. Do you remember anything about this film before it came out?
I think, I don't know, was it 2011?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't. I think it's one of those summer movies which kind of comes out at the tail end. You know, it's an August release, wasn't it? So it was kind
Yes,
of
it was.
you kind of half expecting it to be like mediocre or just be like either disappointing or nothing that's like that impressive. So it's kind of one of those things that yes, it came a bit out of nowhere, but when it was out, it was like, oh, actually, this is really fucking good, actually. So I think it kind of like, I think that's probably what you're thinking. There probably wasn't much of a anticipation for it, because if there was any, it was a bit like, yeah, okay, this might be good. Probably be disappointing, really, the back of your head. And then it came out and it turned out to be actually rather good.
We did the midnight screening for it.
I don't.
Because for us, I mean, especially for myself, because I was a big fan of the original films, and off the back of Lord of the Rings, and King Kong and things like that with Andy Serkis, it was kind of it seemed to have that because of his motion capture, the interest from that, and then the trailers were great, and especially the trailers with the bridge battle,
Right.
and all the stuff from that, and they had the tagline was really good, which was "Evolution becomes revolution" or revolution.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember any of that.
And so we went and saw it at midnight. So we were quite excited for it.
So that suggests some level of hype. You don't just stick midnight screenings on for everything, do you?
Well, no, exactly. I mean, it was. I guess it was as well. People were thinking it was going to exercise the memory of the Tim Burton film.
I think that's all I wanted by that point. I'm trying to think if I watched, because I definitely watched the original 5, but I can't remember if I watched them in the lead up to this film or liked this film then watched them. Can't really remember. But it would put it to like 9 or so years ago I watched them all. I rewatched them. I think I watched them in the build-up to War. The reason I say that is the box set I thought I had, I looked up the other day, and it didn't include War, which means it wasn't a set I bought after War. It must have been in the build-up to it. It must have been after Dawn. And when I watched them all, if I were to be hypercritical, and you'd have to be being hypercritical, because the characters they've realised here are incredible. But there is no doubt that, I don't know if it's due to budget, technology, or both. I suspect both. But the CG takes a big step forward in the next two. And by the third film, the level of nuance in Caesar's performance is extraordinary. There are scenes in this film, particularly when he's a baby, where he doesn't quite look like he's there, but that's being hypercritical. I mean, that's 9 or 10-year-old CG on a small budget for a CG heavy film.
Yeah, I think as well as it seemed like they decided to go with a bit of a stylized hybrid look for his character. They didn't go like they did with some of the other apes. They didn't go for something that was like completely realistic in terms of like a photoreal chimpanzee.
He's supposed to. So you're suggesting he's supposed to look a little bit other?
Yeah,
so when
absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
When people like Brian Cox look at him, he's like, "There's something unsettling about this."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe because he's had the drug from birth.
Yeah, I mean, I know the eyes are meant to look a bit different. And,
I know. Yeah,
there's no doubt that eyes are normally sort of a giveaway. I mean, Gollum was an incredible achievement for the time, but if you watch like Gollum now, he doesn't really look like he's in the shot quite a lot. I mean, there's a bit at the start of Two Towers where he sort of jumps down on them and he's wrestling on the floor with Sam and so on. And if you watch it now, he doesn't look like he was in the shot. It was terrific for its time. But, you know, the eyes look a bit glassy and things like that. Still an incredible achievement. But the level of realism they can get into sort of the eyes. And I'll comment on that when we get to war.
Yeah.
There's one particular scene in that film where Caesar has to emote a mixture of sort of averted grief and relief. And I've never seen digital work like it. Because these are animals we've got a frame of reference for.
Yeah,
you know, it's different with the Na'vi because they don't exist.
Yeah, if you look at Cobra as well, I mean, it's maybe difficult with him because he's so scarred, but even he has kind of like a different kind of.
I think Cobra's an incredible achievement as a character, full stop, and I think that comes out more in the.
Oh yeah, in the next one.
And I think there's a degree of. Matt Reeves really was able to see what about the first film worked.
Yeah,
and expand on it.
I actually forgot that there was such a big role for Cobra in this film because it's been such a long time since I watched it, and I kind of just remember him from the second film.
I mean, he is mocapped by somebody else in this film. It becomes sort of Toby Kebbell in the next.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wasn't Toby Kebbell in Fantastic Four, the
Yes.
Josh Trank one?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was Doctor Doom.
Yeah. Never mind. Anyway, that went well. Okay, so what did we think of it?
It's great. I mean, it's just really intelligently kind of put together, and it's the way they use him, Caesar, as the central character, and as the protagonist. It's just, and the way they build it all around him is astonishing, and just kind of, it's just really, really inventive. And really, it surprises you, but it doesn't sacrifice spectacle for emotion. I mean, there's a few shots where they're kind of showing off a bit too much, where like you kind of, it's like I was watching Bumblebee, and that was a good film as well, but it was over edited because. Instead of doing kind of close-ups and stuff for some tension, they just had lots of scenes where you had the lead actress, that was Haley Steinfeld, and robots in the same scene, and then you kind of have the camera going through their legs and stuff and going all around and all that kind of thing. And there was a couple of kind of shots here. Like I think there was one where it came out of, either went into Caesar's eyes or came out of Caesar's eyes and then went off and then went back into his eyes, and it just kind of takes me out of the film. But there was not a lot of it, and especially with John Lithgow. that kind of bit of the storyline as well really helped. And because I mean, to be honest, for me, the only real weak link is James Franco. I don't really kind of buy him in this role, and he just seems kind of just like he doesn't really have. I don't know the kind of depth that another actor might have given it. I said that they originally wanted Tobey Maguire.
Okay, that would have irritated me for different
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah.
I think I'd have bought it more. You know, what's Zoe Deschanel doing in the film? Looks at the screen. Oh, it's Tobey Maguire. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go next if you like. It's funny. I watched them all together in the build up to War. So obviously I must have watched these two and then gone that evening to see War or whatever. And my sense of it at the time was that Rise was probably the film I enjoyed most on first viewing. But when I watched them close together, Rise didn't play quite as strong. So I came into this with a little bit of sort of, not trepidation, because I knew I liked it. And I had a brilliant time with this today. I think it's just, it's perfectly paced. In fact, it only starts losing me a little bit in the final act, but there are still enough beats in that it sort of keeps my interest. Because big action set pieces have to be really good to hold me generally. But there is a lot of emotion in the Apes that they're animated in, and it does work. I would agree with Charlie, but I seem to have a little bit of a blind spot on James Franco anyway. I don't know if it's revelations about his private life. I hope not, because I try to separate those things, and a lot of it is always sort of conjecture and supposition anyway. But maybe I didn't like him much in the Spider-Man films, although he was somewhat well cast for it because he plays all right as a sort of spoiled little rich kid. But it's seeded in me a feeling of him as somewhat petulant. And even though he'd have been, I don't know, about 32 filming this, I imagine, I just don't carry that gravitas of a sort of seasoned senior research figure. I can't see him in this role. If you're going to cast someone a bit who doesn't necessarily look like they've got the gravitas, it either has to be a more cartoony film, or they've got to play as some sort of bizarre genius. See Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man films. I mean, it's just that there's the casting of a bit of a maverick is the only way around it. And I don't think he's that. I never thought he's a leading man. And of course, the whole sort of film crosses about an 8-year period, which means in the early scenes of the film, he's meant to be ludicrously young, really doing this stuff. So yes, I would agree he's the weak link. I think everyone else in the film I really like. I love the John Lithgow stuff. That could have been clumsy. I think if I was hearing a pitch for this film and the pitch for the film was around this guy who was researching Alzheimer's and he's found a cure and his dad just happens to have it, I'd think there's something a bit lazy in the writing to that. But actually it really works. It's well written, this film. It gives it real sort of pathos. And he's brilliant in it, and he has a lovely little relationship with Caesar as well. So I like all of that. I like the fact that Caesar has the sort of tragic flaw of temper, which is a theme that will spread across the three films, in that Caesar actually becomes a little bit more tempered over time. He's very much the sort of rebellious adolescent at this point. So all of that I really like. It's a good-looking film. The score's a bit forgettable for me, but that might be because I've just still got Giacchino's from the third film in my head. But I really liked it. You can see it's the start of something. I think it's probably helped this film that I haven't watched 2 and 3 in prep yet. So I'm not comparing it to what's coming later. I'm just watching this as a fresh restart for the series. And James Franco aside, who's not terrible in it by any means, this is superb stuff.
Oh gosh, I can't compete.
Of course you can. Come on.
Yeah, no, like you, so I couldn't really remember sort of like, the hype and the build up to this film. I don't know if it's some kind of like, if it was off the back of like a anniversary of the original release, which wasn't the case. I think I probably haven't seen this one since it came out in 2011, but I did have like a vivid memory of it kind of like the sort of the green eyes, and then obviously the mid credits sting at the end with the virus kind of spreading all around the world, which now takes on a whole different meaning.
Totally unrealistic.
Totally unrealistic. No, it's never going to
get a pandemic these days, are you?
No, it doesn't happen like that. No. Yeah, no, I was amazed by it all, and the visuals. I mean, it's only sort of a few years old, but the visuals still hold up. There was probably maybe one scene towards the end when they storm the Genesis building that perhaps looks a little bit on the dodgy side, but generally the effects still hold up. And for something that mocap was still kind of very much going through the motions, and after having been used to such fantastic effects in like Lord of the Rings and King Kong, for example, Andy Serkis pretty much has the market cornered, and it's still it's good to know that he sort of played other of the eight sort of roles as well, the various other species too, which I think is really interesting. I don't know if they've ever got around to giving him a motion capture Oscar, a category all of his own. But yeah, I've sadly not seen this film since its cinematic release, and it's incredible to to see it again and see that the majority of it really does hold up. I would agree that he just kind of appeared to be like the weak link in it. It seems to be like in a different film to everybody else. Still gives it a decent performance, but I kind of feel like it's phones it in a little bit. But yeah, the stuff with the Alzheimer's is really interesting. Obviously, having lost grandparents, and that's to myself as well. So obviously, there's a personal link there too. All the rest of the cast are fantastic. Obviously, got Tom Felton, who's his first big role out of the Harry Potter films. Seems a little bit kind of underused, but he's going to be pigeonholed in that kind of villain role after playing Draco Malfoy for
he's doing something
of a
right,
decade.
I fucking hate him in this.
Yeah,
he's
doing something right. He's really he's really unlikable, and you just think, oh, he's an idiot. He clearly doesn't treat any of the animals correctly, and he gets to say that the iconic line, a couple of the iconic lines from the original film, so he kind of gets that in. But yeah, he's pretty much kind of one of like the kind of the sub villains of the piece. But then you've got an actor like Brian Cox, who the only kind of vibe I get from him really is that he doesn't care about animal welfare, but he doesn't give a damn, and it's just like why cast somebody a great actor like Brian Cox and just have him like a really minimal role. But it's great to see him. This film on the whole has a fantastic cast, and all probably bar one. They're firing on all cylinders pretty much. And yeah, I would agree with you, Charlie, as well. It's kind of it's put in such a way that it kind of doesn't compromise really when it comes to kind of key plot points and key beats. And as I say, same with you, Dave, as well. I'm going to watch them. I was going to say in isolation, but I didn't kind of watch them like all together back to back. I just kind of when we come to do the next one, I'll watch it, and then when we come to do the last one, Wolf Planet of the Apes, I'll watch that. So that's what I mean when I say in isolation, not actually in isolation, unfortunately. That takes on a different tone these days. But yeah, it's not going to kind of spoil, my appreciation of them for what comes later on. So yeah, I was just blown away by it really, and it's like this, it feels to me like a proper entry into the series. Like it's done right. It's a new story from a different angle, and it seems that everyone's really on top form. They brought their A game, and how many other epithets like that I can chuck to say that I really enjoyed this film, basically.
I did feel as well, and we'll talk about it as we go through the film, that all the little nods to the previous series, like Bright Eyes and the Icarus and stuff like that, that's like an Easter egg if you care to notice it.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't actually matter.
No one's going to
start going, what's that reference mean?
There, but it doesn't go, look, Bright Eyes. Look.
It's not Die Another Day. It's not a bunch of references in the middle of the room. So yeah.
Yeah, because I only really got Bright Eyes when I actually watched this series. I was like, oh yeah, Bright Eyes, that's a reference to Rise.
Yeah, this is it. See, you learn a lot by, despite only having The Simpsons as your frame of reference.
Yeah.
You learn a lot by having Dave and Charlie on the show. So.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines as everyone else, really. I really enjoyed my viewing today. the thing I most took away was just how efficient it was in its storytelling, and just how it's a nice lean an hour 45, and doesn't overstay its welcome, but you don't really feel like it's particularly too short either. It's really well crafted. Just little sort of things like how it drops its exposition, and little things like you don't drive, remember that, and then it sets up for other things as well. And but yeah, I was thinking a bit about the whole Franco thing. I thought he's actually quite good in it, considering how he normally is, unless he's doing comedic roles. Or doing some really sort of wacky and zany. I thought he was fine, but then I don't think the story really isn't really like the lead. Really, it's Andy Serkis, who is really like the driving force. I think Franco and Frida Pinto are kind of like the human ciphers that kind of drive the story forward, or at least they're half the story forward. But I think the real star show is Andy Serkis. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But I thought it was great.
Yeah, I pick up on one point you made there, that most things in this film have a point, and those points aren't just to pick that example. Dad, you don't drive. That is exposition for what's coming later, but it serves the scene we're in, because he's having to watch his father just fade in front of his very eyes. So it's not just let's get that bit of exposition in. It's we need to get this across in this scene. If we use this, we can actually reprise it later. Yeah. And I just think it's so intelligently written.
It doesn't sort of like knock you, sort of like it doesn't telegraph to you. Remember this, because
absolutely,
because it's coming out. Yeah. The only other thing to add though is probably he's not convincing the scientist though, James Franco, but he does look like someone who would take in a monkey. So there is that.
Yeah, there's a kindness to his sort of bearing in this film, and when he's pissed off later, and like you will go and move things around on your computer and stuff. That's all convincing enough to me. Definitely.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you there, Chris. He's like the human cipher. He's like the human, side of it all, I think. But yeah, I just kind of feel like, he's a good actor. We've seen him in the Spider-Man films, but I kind of feel like here he's in a slightly different film, or he's perhaps maybe not giving us full performance for whatever reasons. I don't know.
Restrained.
Restrained. Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. Restrained. Yes.
Anyway, shall we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
Let's do it. Yeah, it's such a short runtime as well, this film, as you mentioned. I was like, wow, it zipped through. So hopefully we'll have no problem rattling through it.
I think that might be one of... I think the sequels do get quite a bit longer.
They do, yep. I do remember that for sure. So
we're straight into, like, the efficiency of the storytelling straight from the first scene. Because I put this on today, and I knew I had to watch it for this, but sometimes you're not necessarily in the mood, and that's the danger of leaving it till the last day, the day you actually record. So I put it on going, okay, I've got to watch this. And within like 5 minutes, I'd completely forgotten I wasn't in the mood. It was just like, it had me straight away. Because we're straight into them basically rounding up apes in their natural environments quite brutally.
Yeah, so basically sort of see apes in the jungle, and they basically just sort of seem captured, really.
Yeah, and those that are left sort of, again, the humanity is the wrong word because they're apes, but the sort of almost the sense of empathy and outrage in apes that he does show us, the ones that aren't captured going out of their mind with fury that one of theirs has been taken. And I just think that's just like a nice touch. And then we go straight to
and we see like
company.
We see like sort of like the tint in their eyes.
Yeah, it goes into an eye and out of an eye, and we see that it's flecked with green. Obviously, if it isn't obvious to everybody, the chimp's eyes are brown before this happens. But we come back out, something is different. We're not quite sure why at this stage. But we assume it has something to do with intelligence because she's doing... I had to look up the term for it because I've forgotten. It's called the Towers of Hanoi puzzle. I've heard of it before. It's like 3 sticks out of the ground with different sized discs, and you have to put them all in order without ever putting a bigger disc on top of a smaller one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sounds it. Yeah.
It's kind
I
of
believe so. Yeah, you have to do it on like the least number of moves. But yeah, it's the Towers of Hanoi.
perfect score.
But in the
is
film,
15 moves.
Lucas Tower's named after the creator.
Okay. And he's basically Will Rodman. He's called James Franco's character's overseeing this. There's an ape called Bright Eyes. They're testing a drug called ALZ 112. ALZ Alzheimer's, although they don't spell that out for a couple
ALZ.
of scenes. ALZ, yeah. Well, it would be in this country.
Well, it should be Alz.
It's America.
Yeah, it's Alzheimer's drug. So.
Yeah, and he wants to go to human trials, so he's saying to David Oyelowo, who's called Stephen Jacobs, I think. He's and he's been working on this for about 5 years, which is another thing that when we move on 8 years after this, you think how old James Franco meant to be. But,
yeah, that's it. But he looks perennially young. So
so
like, he still looks the same now.
Yeah. So basically, we get some exposition, but it's exposition by way of explaining it to the board of directors who need to sign off on the next stage of trials. And he explains that it will grow new brain cells, and we call it a cure for Alzheimer's. And the only side effect is the sort of green speckling in the eye. And at the same time, I can't believe how efficient this is. At the same time,
and all the kind of like exposition for all the expositionary bits that we do have in the film, it's not so much like an info dump, does it? It does kind of move things along at a pace. It's not just like, oh, info dump, here you are, or Basil, exposition. It's done in quite an expedient way.
Definitely, and we got cut straight to Robert Franklin. That's it. He's trying to coach Bright Eyes out of her cage to take them in to meet the board of directors and show that I could tell she was hiding something even when I saw the film the first time, but it didn't occur to me what, because she's suddenly getting aggressive, and when they force her out of the cage, she tries to get back in, and when they can't do that, she just goes mad and goes rampant through the building.
Yeah, she goes berserk.
Ends up jumping through the window of the conference room, and then the security guards kill her. And the funny thing with the thing with that is when she's in the sort of area where she's caged and handled, they're trying to shoot her with tranquilizers. It's only when she gets out into the main building that it's the building's security, hence she gets shot. And their immediate call is to put down all of the rest of the animals, and the project is dead. You need to start again. But we find that she was hiding a baby. She was pregnant. That's the only bit of the film that doesn't quite ring true to me, because I just think that these animals...
They know that before, surely.
I would think that any animal would get like a full health check before they started doing these things.
It got me wondering, like, well, how long have they been there for? Because surely there would be... I mean, I don't know how long...
I don't know how much apes show either. I mean, obviously, when a human woman is pregnant, you can almost always tell. I don't know if that's the case with apes. I don't know. What did we think of it all so far? Because I'm just basically describing the first act of the film.
No, I mean, this is pretty much like the prelogue, though, isn't it?
And
it's all done like swiftly.
It's quite upsetting in places.
Yeah.
Especially that opening sequence, which kind of, I guess, you maybe don't expect to see something like that. So to see them being captured, and so, I mean, presumably that was her mate that she was separated from.
Yeah, it was quite graphic, wasn't it? As well, it was kind of. I was quite surprised. I remember seeing it at cinema and being like, "Oh," and then obviously seeing it again on home release. I was quite surprised by how graphic it was.
And then when she kicks off, when they're trying to take her into the for the board meeting, again, it's quite it's quite distressing, really. I
always thought so. Just the moment she shot, and it's just like she's smart, but they still just can't quite communicate with each other. She could not communicate what the issue was. I found it really difficult, but and again, the performances in the film, the guy that plays the handler, Robert, he doesn't want to put Caesar down, so he's trying to give. Well, they haven't called him Caesar at this point, but when they give the baby to, and he just says, "Look, I've put down 12 of these things now. I'm done. I can't do this. This is a baby. You have to look after him." And just the whole look on his face is like, you do buy that they are first and foremost, at least those two staff, not there for the profits. And we're about to meet Will's father, but he's there for scientific and altruistic reasons.
Yeah.
And Robert's working in the job he's in because presumably he has some love for and empathy for animals.
Yeah.
And what he's had to do that afternoon, he's found devastating.
Took me ages to kind of. I was watching it. I was thinking, what do I know him from? And then I finally got around to looking him up on IMDb, and he was actually in a film that I really, really like called Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah, that's great. That.
Where it's him and Alan Tudyk are both kind of rednecks, and
Right. I've not seen it, but I remember the cover for it. And
they come across a group of like co-eds and whatever, and
it's kind of a reversal of like comedic reversal of the horror movie. You know, you got like the college kids going like getting hacked off by like deranged like country folk, but really like they're like sweet and innocent and completely like oblivious. And they're just like all the deaths are like complete misunderstandings.
Yeah,
it's actually quite funny.
That sounds really pretty cool, actually. He's done a fair bit of TV as well. Yeah. Okay. I didn't recognise him certainly, but I actually think he's really good at this.
And again, there's a point to when he gets ill. There's a point to it, and that which obviously only really comes about until the end credits. But that's another really nice touch.
It is a nice touch, and just but it also it implies pressure within that company. The moment he drops the mask, they panic. Put it back on. There's no sense of leave the room because presumably they're under deadlines, and this, David's character, Owalu's character, is like forcing them through at a certain pace. Presumably, because by that point
there's also
they've lost several years.
There's also an element of like embarrassment, isn't there? It's like, oh shit, I fucked up. I don't think anyone noticed. Okay, you know what I mean? It's like there's that element, isn't there? To like, oh shit, well I've owned up, a big deep shit. Okay, well,
yeah, probably. But moving back to this point, so he's now got like a baby chimpanzee to take home, and. What do we first see? Is John Lithgow first spotted playing the piano really badly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was just, again, I'm going to repeat myself a lot here, but just so efficient. It's like, we don't even
it moves
need to
along
be
really
told.
quickly, doesn't it? It's a really good example. Well, apart from the little bits of Basil that we do get. Show, don't tell.
But 2 scenes ago, we had, this is the cure for Alzheimer's. He walks into his house before we've heard a word. I think you can divine his father's got it.
Mm.
You can kind of easily sort of decipher that, but yeah, it moves along in such.
But the next thing it tells
such
us,
a really good way.
But we've got the keys conversation, but then we've got the sweetness of his reaction to the baby.
Yeah.
Which tells us that on balance, this baby is going to be a positive in their lives.
Yeah, something special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because he's like, it makes my dad happy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they decide to call him. Well, what's his father called? I've forgotten his father's name.
Charles Rodman.
Charles.
Charles. Okay, Charles names him because and they're amazed at his intelligence straight away. He's a day or two old and he's feeding himself.
Mm.
Yeah, he quotes Shakespeare, doesn't he, Caesar? So.
And then we go straight. What do we go next to? I think he treats him, doesn't he? The thing is shut down, so he just takes some of this compound and gives it to his father. And
yes, don't we go in like this is time jumps now, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think he gets treated before the time jump, doesn't he?
So it's 3 years later.
Yeah.
So Caesar's become more intelligent. And while basically, James Franco has been more working at home than he is in the thing because he's sick with the development of Caesar. He's now kind of like.
Is his father treated after the first time jump? Because there's 2 time jumps.
I think it's within this one, isn't it?
Right, so it's 3 years later. His
Yeah.
father's that much worse, and he spots how intelligent Caesar is, and how quickly he's developing. Okay, and he treats his father.
Yeah, his father has that disagreement, doesn't he? And he kind of he sees how agitated he becomes.
Yeah, because
So
they take him to the forest, don't they?
Well, that introduces the next time jump. That introduces the next time jump, so he must treat his father first. I'm assuming. Let me have a look. Yeah. So, of course, they thought ALZ 112 caused violence because of Bright Eye's behaviour. We're now 3 years on. I'm just looking to see when the time jump is. I do need to look. Yeah, it is the 3 years later. So, a nurse, he's there like the one bit of clumsy exposition. He's on a computer and he's dictating, and he's talking about Caesar's progress. And he's got his own room in the attic, likes to look out the window, swings around the house, and has really got it down pat and is happy there. And while he's there, his father has an altercation with his nurse. They're screaming, and when she goes up, she said, "I can't do this. He belongs in a home." So looking at Caesar, putting two together, realizing they can't go on like this, he goes and takes some of the drug and gives it to his dad, and the next day he's playing the piano perfectly and fixed, basically. And I think we get introduced to the neighbour now as well.
Yeah, the most angriest man in the world.
This is a bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah, he's super angry, isn't he? It's like, "Durr!"
Well, Caesar wants to play, so he goes into next door's garden, and basically this guy loses his shit. But he injures him. He does get him cut. So then we have to go. Then we go and meet the love interest, and I'm not sure about this character. He takes Caesar to the zoo to meet the vet there, Caroline, Frida Pinto's character, who operates. Caesar's basically sign language now, and he's telling his father, if you like, that he should date this woman.
And many more besides.
What's the point?
And more things besides. Yeah, I rate Frida Pinto as an actress as well.
Yeah,
but I for some reason I don't. I mean, they're really lovely together, but I don't kind of. It doesn't quite gel with me, I'm afraid. I kind of feel like it just needs a little bit more.
What do you think the point of this character is? That was the question I was going to ask you all. Because the love story's not that strongly developed, is it?
Personally, I don't think it's anything like remotely strong or substance. I think it's mostly out of more. See, when I look at these two characters, it's kind of like the two parts of the human opinion. It's like it's your one character who thinks about doing one thing, and you got the other character who kind of like pushes against it slightly. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of. Is
it, to paraphrase Jeff Goldblum, he's whether you can and she's whether you should.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
you kind of got the moral side of it, haven't you? The theoretical and moral side of it.
And also, I think she's maybe there so that when Caesar has to go, that his life, there's not a huge hole in his life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, okay.
Because she moves in.
Yes. So, where are we now? So we go. They take him to. So he clearly wants to go out and about. He was trying to go next door to play. So they take him across the Golden Gate Bridge, which is vital for later. Take him to a forest so he can play outdoors, and this gives us the next time jump. We see him sort of swinging around these trees, and by the time he's at the top, he's wearing like a sweater, and he's, now 8 years old.
Also, just as a side, if anyone gets the chance, or any listeners get the chance to go to Squaw National Park, highly recommend it. Indeed, anywhere around the Bay Area. So, again, it's one of those ones, obviously, where location is key.
This is a real forest, then. This isn't artistic license.
No, it's a real location that you can visit.
Okay.
It smells amazing. Like if you ever have any kind of respiratory problems, or if you get kind of really bad hay fever, or whatever, I recommend you can go to this park, breathe in all the air, because it will open your tubes.
Yeah.
Maybe
Smells of chimpanzee.
not if you've got
No,
COVID.
well, it does smell of, and obviously, exactly. It's got it's a location as well as if we do the series, we'll come to it when we do that film Vertigo, or even if you're going to do the X-Men, we're going to do it then as well.
Yep.
It's a real national park, definitely, and highly recommend it. It's really beautiful. I think it contains some of the oldest and tallest redwoods in America, certainly. So,
but we're introduced to him building an attachment to this place. We are given the idea that it's a very natural environment for him because he's swinging around it and all the rest of it. And the third thing is it introduces us to the concept of supplication.
This really confused me, because obviously if he studies, sorry to interject, but if he was meant to be like an expert on chimps and their language and that sort of thing, how come he doesn't know that gesture? I mean, I know that's being really nitpicky. I know
he's an expert on the brain.
Well, exactly. I was kind of thinking, but if he, if he's raised all this time, then how? I thought, how does he not know? But I'm just being really picky.
Yeah. Right, you're asking how has Caesar not done this once in 8 years?
Yeah, but it happens. I'm just being picky, just for a laugh.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think that's a really important. That's a key moment in the film. I think that's a good reason that Frida Pinto's character to explain. Oh, this is what this means, and this is how it will go on to impact his character for the down the line. But I was like, how does he not know? But I'm just being really picky for a laugh.
Okay.
Another thing to point out in terms of like kind of important plot points for a character arc, we also see Caesar interact with a dog, a pet dog who is barking. And he's on a leash like he is, and I think that sort of starts like the connection of like, well, hang on, am I a pet or what am I doing?
But it doesn't really start it's straight into it.
Yeah.
This isn't seeded. We're straight into, am I a pet?
Yeah. I think what I mean by that is that it kind of sets the motion for what happens later on, where we're at the.
Am I a possession?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. When he actually tries to buy him out, and Caesar actually won't go because he sees the leash, and he's like, what's the difference? You know what I mean, kind of thing.
But I think there's also an immaturity to Caesar at this stage of his life.
Yeah.
So he's hot-tempered. We find that later, and I think it isn't just when he is offered a way out and doesn't take it. I see that almost as much about fucking petulance as anything else at this stage of his life. We do see development of Caesar as a character across the 3 films, as I recall. Although I've got to revisit the next 2. So we're 5 years on again now. So he's 8. A dog barks at him as they're leaving the wood forest. The couple are still together, and Caesar through sign language is asking about and he's like, I'm your father, and it's like, well, I can see why Caesar's confused because he's just been on a lead. And he's asking about his mother and all the rest of it, and he's taken to where Will works, and it's explained to him that his mother was given something that made her intelligent and passed it on to him.
Yeah.
Where from there? We're straight on to we go. He goes home and Charles is trying to eat an egg with the wrong end of the fork. So again, really efficient. He's back to being in a terrible
starting
state.
Again.
Yeah, we get a bit of exposition from Will that he's looking at proteins bonding to the disease, or antibodies, sorry, and he can see it on blood work. So basically his body is fighting off what is effectively a virus, albeit it's like Red Dwarf, it's a positive virus, it's making him more intelligent. Okay, so then what? We've got him picking up keys and going out, and Charles going into a car, and it's not his car, is it?
No, I mean, surprisingly, it's just left open.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, you're kind of asking for trouble when you just like.
The only thing I know it suits the plot, but I would think if this man has the house to himself at times, therefore he is being left by him. I would think a neighbour would know his neighbour had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, though there's something strikes me about the relationship that they don't really speak to each other.
Yeah.
But
mind you, he injured Caesar a few years before. You probably don't want anything to do with him.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. So basically, he gets into this car, starts trying to drive it because I think he used to have a car like it or something. Thinks it's his, drives it into the car in front. This aggressive neighbour comes out and starts like threatening him and jabbing his finger in his chest.
Yeah.
And Caesar's up looking through his window.
Yeah, and sees him pointing at his chest, which is like aggressive.
Yeah. And Caesar is just getting more and more aggressive, more and more worked up and upset about it until he comes flying out of the house and knocks the shit out of this guy. And then the thing that tells me he has lost it, that's the bit. It isn't that he bit his finger off. It's that he beat him a bit. The guy managed to get away, and Caesar couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
He has completely lost it at this point. So he's immediately under, we don't even see the court order. The next thing, he's under a court order and he's being put into a primate shelter.
For at least 6 months, I think it is.
We're told that it's if he wants to appeal it, it'll be a 3-month wait to get an appeal date.
Yeah.
So when these dates come through, I don't imagine they're tomorrow, so he's got several months to wait. Caesar's heartbroken. What did we think of all this? Because I just thought the performance capture and everything with Caesar here is amazing.
Again, it's really upsetting.
I found this quite difficult, I have to say.
Yeah, I had to sort of look away. I was like, definitely during the scene, have some tissues, at the ready if you're a little bit emotional like I am. It did kind of heartbreaking. And I just after seeing the beauty of Lord of the Rings as well, I just forgot how good Andy Serkis was, and I was just like, oh my god, incredible.
It's especially as it's one of those scenes where you know what's coming, and you're powerless to stop it. You can't do anything about it, and it's like it's horrible to watch.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the film is not going to end with Caesar sat at home with the family watching like Jeopardy or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
No, we all know how it's going to end.
But I'm not making fun there. I'm agreeing with you that like this has to end badly.
Yeah, we all know how it goes.
It's horrible because they're actually quite a nice little family unit.
And you want them to live happily ever after, but sadly it's not
and
to
there's
be.
something about this place that isn't just about the casual cruelty of one or two of the handlers and the indifference of the owner. There's almost the sense that it is dishonest in what it's presenting to its
it's meant to be sort of like sanctuary shelter, but it's far from.
As soon you think it's going to be this nice open play area.
Nope.
And within minutes, it's like it's a bit of a dungeon, really.
Yeah. What do I do?
I like the little touch of like him touching the wall with like what's supposed to be like the sky and the sun.
Yeah, and he's kind of banging against it, and that kind of gets that's like a foreshadowing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is where we meet Brian Cox as well, and he does the old trope thing of like, oh, I'm actually a nice guy, Oh,
well, I'm
it's
going
okay.
to ask a naive question now: is he a bad guy, or is he just like not interested, completely blasé about the whole thing?
No, he's corrupt. He's like, but obviously his son is a real dickhead, but he's complacent in it because he's willing to take bribes and things like that. At the end of the day, and so.
Well, I'm certainly not trying to argue he's a good guy, but I'm not quite sure he's full on a villain either. He's just neglectful of his responsibilities. He doesn't seem to really care about any. He doesn't even check on the primates that are there. He just leaves it to his son and has no idea what his son's doing. And his son's, casually teasing and low grade torturing them.
Yeah, I don't know. I always got the impression that he was complacent in it. He was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So Caesar's here. He's getting sort of insulted by Tom Felton's character. What's he called? Dodge or something silly like that. And then what does he throw some food at him or something? And then immediately gets hit with the sort of power hose, the water.
Mm.
And then the next thing, he gets the shit kicked out of him. The first time he goes out into the play area, Rocket, who I think is a bonobo, rips like Caesar's sweater off and basically beats him up. And it's not going well for him.
Mm.
And at the same time, this is cross-cut with like James Franco trying to get him out. And he does become friends with Maurice, who's an amazingly good-looking sort of recreation of an orangutan. What an amazing-looking piece of CG work this character is. And
You would think it's real.
It looks real, doesn't it? It looks real.
He does. Yeah, he does.
I think, obviously this one, is in sort of a few years old, but as I say, the CG really does hold up. I think, all the ape and various species, different characters, are very well crafted. And they all, you can see every little subtle movement and every sort of wrinkle, every hair, every scar, and it's incredible. But yeah, I would say he does look real. I was like, ECG, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not flawless across the whole film, but it's still
it's
still impressive.
Even in the
and some of the characters are great.
The other films that will come across, there is a little bit of variation here and there. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's amazing.
And
time.
So they bond over sign language.
Yeah, and I think he learns to break out of his cage because he's stolen a knife. Manages to sort of break out of the cage, steals first off he goes out. There's a gorilla in the sort of main play area who's never let out of his cage, and he gets Rocket to go back in there. But before he's done that, he lets the gorilla out, and basically gets the gorilla on his side because he's let him out. Lets Rocket into there. Rocket goes to smacks him over the head, and then as soon as he goes to react, he can't because immediately the gorilla is going to he's not going to let him, and so he immediately has to show supplication to Caesar, which is what that was set up earlier. So Caesar is now the alpha, and that's what that whole sequence is trying to hit. So he's now in a position that they will follow whatever he schemes.
Yeah,
and at the same time, there's a more powerful version of this drug that Will has sort of developed to be delivered by gas.
Yeah. So this is where Cobra comes in, isn't it? They've got another.
Yeah, Will is because of what's happened with his father in that he's pleading the opposite from the early part of the film. He's pleading, go careful with this. And with all the years that have been wasted, sort of Jacobs wants to rush this now. So they choose to test it on Cobra, who's a badly scarred bonobo, who's clearly been tortured at some point in his life. And that's where, when he's tested...
He looks really unhinged, doesn't he? I don't know what it is, but he just looks like...
It's the milky eye, I think. What do you guys think? I think this is a hell of a design.
So yeah, it's kind of classic Hollywood coding of the kind of scarred face and the kind of mean kind of already he looks like you said, like he's been tortured, like he's been through hell already. So that when he gets these increased intelligence, it's kind of, you can see that he's going to be one that's going to use it completely for non-altruistic reasons.
I just think there's a tragedy to this character as well, though. He's never a stereotypical villain across any of these. He's effectively got PTSD, I think. But they test it on him, which delivers a gas. He sort of jerks at the last minute and sort of actually knocks the sort of tube off, which releases gas into the room, but Robert doesn't have his mask on, not properly. The others do, so they're all okay. But Robert has inhaled this particular treatment, which has not ready to be tested on humans yet. And I just think, again, just a little moment, but totally consistent with what's going to come, and happens perfectly naturally.
Yeah.
What then? Charles is getting worse. So Will takes a capsule home to try to sort of give it to his dad. His dad turns it down, though, and just sort of stops him, lying in bed, stops him. And so he dies overnight. So now, yeah. What else? What then?
So
we must cut back to Caesar here. We must do.
Yeah. So is it got Franklin? Franklin starts to come ill, doesn't he? You start.
Well, first off, I think we spot Caesar scoping out that room. Now he's the Alpha, and he spots like a window at the top he might be able to get out of. So that's the next thing.
Yeah.
So he will get out to at some point, and I can't remember what order things happen in. He will break out to go to the lab to get ALZ 113. He actually goes to Will's house to get it, because Will's taking it there for his dad. It all fits together really well. And he releases the gas to basically make all the other apes effectively as intelligent as him, one assumes.
Yeah. Because they're planning an escape, basically, so he's getting his apes.
Yeah.
You know.
Dodge tries to get him back in his cage, and then we get no. And he really shouts it, but then he sort of like rallies the troops, but effectively just by shouting no again and again.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
I don't know about you, but like when I first saw that in the cinema, I just felt, it could just be me, but I just felt like the whole cinema just was like just silence, like everyone just felt like, oh shit, because I was not expecting it.
It does silence the room. Yeah. It silences the room on the screen and in the screening.
Yeah.
It really does work, and then he's sort of shouting everyone. And just before that, Caesar was clearly like holding court with them all, and Brian Cox did a sort of double take at it, like not like the pigeon in Moonraker, but So I think they're all intelligent now, and Dodge is.
I think we missed the bit where James Franco tries to buy him out, and Caesar refuses.
Yes, he does, because he can't get any court traction, so he just turns up with money and says, "Are you going to let me have him or not?" And so he takes the money, says, "Take your ape." Opens the cage. He won't step out. He actually closes it. He'd already sort of wiped the sort of drawing recreation of the window he'd done in chalk. He'd already rubbed that off in grease. And then he ends up killing Dodge. It's kind of almost by accident, but Dodge is sort of going at him with a little sort of taser. And he basically fires the hose at him, which means he electrocutes.
And he also saves the other one who wasn't as bad, who's more understanding. One of the workers there, because they were just going to beat him to death, presumably.
Yeah, and he just shuts him away.
Yeah.
And of course that starts getting words out that there's something with these apes, and so he can report that. At the same time, Robert was talking to James Franco's character and sneezed blood. Next thing we hear, he's gone sick. And then a couple of scenes later, a neighbour finds him dead.
Yeah,
he sort of dies off.
He shows up at his house trying to
He turned up at Will's to try and talk to him about what's going on, but Will's not in. So first of all, Will doesn't catch it, but B, he sneezes over the neighbour.
Yeah,
which just seems like a set piece to piss off this man, but it will pay back at the end of the film.
Yeah, at the moment it just seems, as you say, it just seems kind of like to tick off the angry chap, but you can see how it does have a knock-on effect later on.
But the thing is, though, is like even if you didn't have that cut scene, I think you kind of like know what's happening, don't you?
Yeah.
you kind of like knowing where the series is ultimately leading. You kind of go, yeah, this is.
Yeah, it's a virus. You can just see. I mean, there are little Easter eggs like we see on the news so that the Icarus has gone missing and stuff like that, but none of that's too important, really. Then what? The apes break out and they go to the genetics lab to break out the apes that are there to be being experimented on, including Cobra, and they go to the zoo and break them out of there as well.
Yeah, and start grabbing the rails and using them as spears.
Yeah, grabbing the rails to use the spears, which I really liked.
The scene there with David Oyelowo, when he kind of steps out and it's almost like the birds when they're all kind of around the circular.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
it's amazing.
Kind of the open plan bit of The Office. He walks in with shades on, looking all cool, making a phone call, and then he realizes the place has been decimated, and then he looks up to find he's surrounded. And it's totally, I'd never thought of that. It's totally taking inspiration from the birds.
Yeah, it's just a great moment.
And then they head for the Golden Gate Bridge because Caesar's taking them to the place he associates with freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say, I'm less interested in all of this than I was in everything that led up to it. This action sequence on the Golden Gate Bridge is well done, and there are several beats to it, but like I'm just waiting for them to get to the other side, really.
Yeah, I think the main thing is something you mentioned earlier about Caesar's temper, and here about whether or not he's ready to kill people for his. I mean, because we saw the thing with Dodge, and that was still accidental. Yeah. And you kind of saw that Caesar was surprised that it happened as well.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of getting to the point where how much is he going to be pushed? Before,
yeah,
I mean,
and even then, it's still a little bit questionable. He's now at the point where he's happy for it to be done in his name, but not.
Yeah, he lets Cobra do it instead with the because that's quite an affecting sequence again with the gorilla with Buck.
Yeah, do you want to talk us through it?
Yes, so
Buck is the big gorilla that he let out to become the alpha.
Yeah, so. When we see several more gorillas, and they topple a bus over and then use it as a barricade, which is really smart. Yeah, and then just push it towards all the cops, and they let them shoot the bus, and then they attack behind it. And then you've got Jacobs around in the helicopter with a sniper. He tries to take them, and then and
at this stage he's almost become a pantomime villain. I think he stays just on the right side, but he is shouting down, "We need to get the lead ape." So he's trying to direct them towards shooting Caesar, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this is one of the moments in the trailer where obviously you don't see the whole thing, but you saw Buck jumping off, trying to protect Caesar, and then jumping off the bridge to get towards the helicopter. Yeah, and that's a great moment as well.
Yeah, and he is shot repeatedly in midair on the way to it.
Yeah,
so it's a suicide mission. That's how much loyalty he's got already.
And again, even though I'd seen it and I knew what happened, I was still really surprised that he made it.
And quite a big jump.
Yeah, but that he made it after being shot, and he still managed to nail the guy inside. And
right. Yeah, and it basically brings the helicopter down. It's hanging, and it's like, visually, it's a little bit like when Lois Lane is hanging out of the helicopter on the top of the building in the first Superman film. It's kind of precariously
or like Bond.
Yeah, I was thinking more Bond.
Or For Your Eyes Only with Locke in the car. Yes.
Yeah.
Very like that visually. And Caesar walks over. They have a moment. And then Caesar just turns, and the subtlety of this is brilliant. I mean, I've sounded like I was being critical of the CG. I mean, I'm just saying compared to the sequels, it's still superb for its time. But the look he gives Cobra, as in, yes, go on. There's an almost imperceptible movement in his eyes, but you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, just a tiny nod. And I think what you were saying earlier about Cobra being unhinged as well comes in here, where he's just very kind of gleefully happy to be able to do this.
And taking his time with it as well as he's pushing. It's not just a swift kick. It's like he just puts his foot on it and just starts slowly pushing it off.
Yeah, and again,
doesn't quip as much as Roger Moore though, does he? You don't get bottoms up or anything from him.
Doesn't try
He
to
had no
shout
head for
Tanya
heights.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't turn down a teenager for sex or anything.
He raises his eyebrow above his milky eye.
Yeah.
And I think that sequence as well, and some of this is really interesting for where people often talk about CG in a negative light because of the weight.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, I suppose a good example would be where the CG is not bad, but it doesn't quite have the gravitas and weight. If you go back and watch the first Spider-Man film, you see the scene where he's protecting a very wet T-shirt Mary Jane from some attackers, and he's bouncing around all over the place. And if you freeze frame it at any point, it looks pretty good, but in movement, it's just got no sense of weight. Of being there.
Yeah, but here they do, and you understand how powerful these animals are, and it really brings that across well. So, because Cobra barely moves at all, really.
No, the strength of these animals. It was one of the things I complained about in the first sort of run of films, that in reality you would assume they would be far stronger than human beings because chimps are a lot stronger than us, frankly. They could rip your arm off.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a couple of times in this film where it is like, he's going to break my arm, and real fear having to interact with one of these when they do lose their temper.
Yeah.
And they've built that into the story when he does attack Will's neighbour. It's like, how far is this going to be? Because how far is this going to go? Because he won't know his own strength. He might kill him.
Absolutely.
Will is sort of there and thereabouts, trying to sort of get some sense into Caesar, but it does end up with them sort of getting to the other side in the forest. Some of them die. Jacobs is obviously dead, but they get to the forest. Will catches up to them and just, I think, kind of asks him to come home, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says come home, and then he hugs him, and then says Caesar is home.
Yeah. And then they sort of, that's it. They're kind of free for now.
Yes, it was a really nice touch because he says it in the third person. Because he could have said, I am home. But the way he says Caesar is home kind of still reminds you that he's kind of this animal that's been brought up, to be super intelligent.
But he's still actually developing, because one of the things that he says, one of the things we didn't cover, I mean, when I asked why Frida Pinto's character is there, I did have an opinion, I just didn't give it. And I think it is partly that sort of moral dimension that he tells, because he was so driven to get a cure for his father, he hadn't even thought about the moral implications of keeping Caesar domestically and so on.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about it, and he's actually pointing at charts in like his office in the house, and he's saying, look at this. He said, his IQ, he said, since last year it's doubled. So between 7 and 8 it doubled. Even if you made that 5, even 10 years of human time, it wouldn't do that. So I think there's a sense that Caesar is still developing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that tells me.
Yeah, it's just a lovely little moment, and it kind of ends the film on a kind of perfect note, really.
Yeah, it really does. Although, of course, we go straight to the credits, and then we cut to mid credits, and the guy next door turned out to be an airline pilot.
Yeah,
and
well,
he's arriving.
He does when Charles tries to take his car. He says, "How am I going to get to the airport now?"
Did he say the airport, did he?
Yeah.
I think I heard what I wanted to hear, because I heard him say, I've got to go to work. But you both agreed, so you're right. But I just heard what I thought he said rather than what he actually said. I'm going to get to the airport.
Yeah.
Okay.
But on first viewing, that would just sound like, well, it could be any sort of reason.
I'm pissed off because I need my car.
Yeah.
Whereas when you watch it, you're going, everything here is seeded. Everything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say any of it is perfect, but it is extremely well written.
Yes.
I'm trying to see. Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver wrote it. I don't know what their track record on writing is. Writer. Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn and War. So they wrote all three, which is great. They wrote Jurassic World. They wrote Mulan, the new live-action version. And they're the ones that have been assigned the third Avatar film.
Yeah. No, it looks like
That's
they
where I've heard the names
produced.
before.
It looks like they produced the third film, but they didn't write it because it was written by Matt Reeves and Mark Bombach, who was uncredited.
I read it wrong.
Who was an uncredited writer on Rise.
Yeah, okay, because I think of Dawn and War as a pair because they're stylistically very different from this one.
Yeah.
But I will, if my viewing of the next two films runs the same way as I expect them to, or they did last time, I will have issues with Dawn that I don't have with War and didn't have with this one. I think Dawn is a good film, but it has one. I won't spoil it, but it has one fatal flaw for me that they try to correct in the third film, and sort of do it. But as for this one, it just ends up he's going to the airport and he's kind of dripping blood from his nose.
Yeah.
And then we see sort of a spider's web of flights around the world as a graphic, which is basically showing this disease spreading around the world. And we do have the line from one of the scientists, this does something to humans it doesn't do to apes.
Yeah.
And that is important, because if you haven't filled in the gap, which you should have done, the gap is basically that when he made it stronger to deliver it as a stronger virus, we've been told it's effectively a virus because antibodies overcame it in John Lithgow's character, treating it as a virus. He's delivered a smaller one that is now a stronger one that's airborne, and it basically does something to humans it doesn't do to apes. So in other words, it's fatal.
Yeah, but the dimension this took on now is just astonishing. This is haunting, really.
It really is.
Just see that like you said, the little kind of spider web, almost like a firework graphic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
You don't realise what it is at first. And then
it's like as you say, like a spider web, kind of like an all-pervading, like tentacles going everywhere.
And that actually is. I mean, I know it's worldwide, whereas what I'm about to say normally applies to an area, but it is like almost a diagram of like the R rate.
Yeah.
Because it's just spreading off exponentially in different directions. And it might have stemmed from one place, but you go somewhere, they go 5 different places, and that's your R rate. That's exponential growth. And so to actually see and think about it and see how easily something like that can spread. This is an extreme example, but in some respects, and I mean no disrespect to people who've lost people through COVID. COVID has been disastrous in every possible way, but it could have been worse in that, like, what if AIDS had been airborne?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We got off with something that's very serious because it has this gestation period and you can be asymptomatic. And it's definitely worse than flu, but it's got more in common with something like that than it does AIDS.
Yeah.
And it could have been something like that. So it just shows you how fragile this stuff is.
Absolutely.
So I guess that would take me on to final thoughts. Everything in this film is so well written. I can nitpick a few things. I can nitpick the leading man a bit, more casting than performance, because his performance is okay. I don't think he's the right person for the role, but again, he does, like Chris said, he does have sort of an empathy and warmth towards Caesar that works for the role, but it's the scientist side of it that's a bit more difficult. I certainly wouldn't have rather had Tobey Maguire, but that's just because I can't stand Tobey Maguire. But
I can't see Tobey Maguire in this either.
There are things. It's just that whiny voice. I couldn't take a film of it. But anyway, there are little flaws. Like, they would know Bright Eyes was pregnant. I think they would. I think Jacobs does become just a little bit too cartoony at the end. You know, he was trying to protect the company, and now he's taking ridiculous risk. But and the CG will get better than this, as good as it is. But on the plus side, the CG is very good in nearly every shot. As I say, we're communicating things through looks and eyes from creatures that don't exist, but are modelled on creatures that do exist. So it's not like the Na'vi. There's no uncanny valley, because what are you comparing it to in that case? So it's really well written. It's really well played. It's really thought provoking, and it does make you want sequels. And I think that on a 93 million budget, trying to achieve this much, that's terrific. Having said that, had they doubled the budget or really gone for it, I dare say there would have been more ambitious set pieces that would have actually undermined what they're trying to communicate through character work here. So a really good start to our final sort of trilogy on this series.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think the whole trilogy is kind of, I hate the word underrated, but it doesn't get talked about at the level of kind of other films that, in terms of its consistency of writing, that I think it just really has great. And like you said, I was a bit half-hearted about watching this again, because it was always, for me, it was always, I guess, I felt like it was maybe the weakest episode, not necessarily to take anything away from that, but because
of the three,
how spectacular the leaps forward, especially the technology, but with the performance as well, performance capture, I guess, of Caesar in the next films. It's kind of, but I take that back, because it was so good, and I was really happy watching it, just to recognise what a fantastic film it really is, and kind of how lucky we were to get blockbusters of this caliber, considering the rubbish we normally get.
Yeah, and genuinely authored. This isn't the Tim Burton reimagining, where he kind of really, when you get down to brass tacks, sort of tried to make a bit of a spin on the first film. It isn't the sequels, where there's a couple of them are very good, but you can just see they're like, we're running out of money, let's just write something that's fairly cheap to make. It isn't any number of blockbusters that try to have emotional stakes and really have nothing to say other than what will bring in an audience and crowd please.
Yeah, because
there's a real sense of authorship to all three of these films.
Yeah, because I mean, what I understand is there's a bit of a gestation to bring this back, because I as far as I know, the film was originally going to be called Caesar, and then it was called Rise of the Apes, and I think maybe there was an early poster that called it Rise of the Apes, and then it was changed to Rise of the Planet of the Apes to just give it a...
But you're right, because it was Rise of the Apes. It absolutely was. When they changed it, it was like, oh my God, that's clunky.
Yeah. Rotter Potter, as Becca likes to call it.
Based on Wittertainment, from what they called it back in the day. Because the titles get longer and longer.
But I guess just give it more kind of name value with the older films.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean it works. It is a little bit clunky. It's not a great title, and I always think Dawn might come before Rise. Really, thinking about it, and of course, this is almost the embryo of the Planet of the Apes. This is not even approaching the Planet of the Apes at the end. At the end of this film, we're at our area of outstanding natural beauty of the apes.
The fetus of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, exactly.
The fetus of the seed
the
of
genesis of the planet.
The germ of the genesis of the Planet of the Apes.
We're at the surprisingly rural park for an urban area of the apes.
Of the AONB of the apes.
Yeah.
The foundations of the Planet of the...
Yeah. Sort of. Yeah. I mean, I suppose. I mean, if you took that graphic away, if you took that mid-credit graphic away of the disease travelling, the title would actually be ludicrous. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. What, you're in a small wood with about 40 of you? That's
Not a planet.
That's not really Planet of the Apes, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, beginning of the Planet of the Apes. But anyway, so yeah, that's
Germ of the seed of the
The
idea.
Planet of the
of
Apes
Planet of the
begins.
yeah. There's no room for any artwork on the poster. The title's so fucking long.
The title's so big. That's why they condensed it down to Rot Potter and Dot Potter and Oft Potter.
But anyway,
The start
Like
of the beginning of the planet.
It's interesting as well, though, that this is something that I remember from the cinema being surprised at, that the actual title at the beginning of the film is kind of, it's just there and it's over. It's just there and it's gone. They don't make a big thing about it like they do with
It's
some
quite fleeting,
things.
isn't it? It appears and then it's
It's not
gone
like
seconds later.
Yeah, it's not like
Well,
this
get it out of the way.
giant big thing going, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's just there, and then you're into the film.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's announced in this kind of really fleeting way. It's like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and then like bye, and then off you go.
the most difficult thing to do when you do that is not make the film almost feel throwaway. When you go rushing straight into your plot like that, it's almost like it can feel cynical.
Yeah,
It can feel like, oh, let's just fucking rush through this, 85 minutes or whatever. And it never feels like that. It just feels like they know what they want to tell us and they're doing it efficiently.
no, it's almost like Saving Private Ryan. It's that that opening moment is just so visceral that it's a great opener for the film, and it really works on well from just having that title.
Becca, you go.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's everything that I said at the beginning. Really, I would sort of agree with all the points of the above. It's not the perfect film. There's some minor flaws, but also sort of major character beats, major plot beats, expedience in the screenwriting, and as you mentioned with Frida Pinto's character, some of the characterizations that we kind of feel perhaps a little bit but underdeveloped, kind of more subtle than what they first appear. Also with Brian Cox's character as well, he's kind of more, as Dave mentioned, it's more kind of like the indifference, rather than just the outright sort of abuse. Unfortunately, we see that more in Tom Felton's character. Unfortunately, very well written. The CGI is and the effects, and a lot of the in-camera effects as well really hold up. And still, obviously a long way to go with the motion capture, and that's been sort of perfected with films such as Avatar, and also The Lord of the Rings and Peter Jackson's King Kong that we saw. And it's still going through an evolution now, even in Hollywood at this time. I think, like, for me, this is probably this trilogy that we're about to go into is probably one of the highlights of the series. Obviously, this is a really legendary series of films, had massive impacts in filmmaking, cinematography, let alone sort of makeup and costumes and advances in those fields. So I kind of think, obviously the first film was a legend, but I think this new trilogy really kind of helped to kick it off. But I do sort of agree with you, Charlie, as well. It's kind of, it doesn't seem to be talked about. I mean, obviously it's held in very high esteem, but it doesn't seem to be talked about in the same circles as other sort of great trilogies and series.
I mean, it's better than the Dark Knight trilogy.
Well, exactly.
Well, that's because
and that gets more revered.
Whatever you think of the Dark Knight trilogy, it finishes with a wet fart of a film, whereas this doesn't.
And one of the films massively overawes the other films.
Exactly.
But certainly in terms of consistency, it's better.
Well, I have to say, it might be partly the change of Bat costume and partly the fact that they did more on-set work, location shooting in the latter two. But Batman Begins feels almost like a different series from The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Yeah. And then The Dark Knight Rises just drops away terribly. I know it's got its defenders, and I've been thinking about that trilogy a lot today because I really want to see it again soon. I like it, but the third part alone puts it below this.
Yeah.
It's probably more popular just because it's Batman as well.
Yeah, I love Batman. So
probably it's probably something that's more.
Same here.
The property, it's more popular rather than Apes. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, this film did well. I mean, you can't argue with this sort of take, really, for a series that had no heat on it by this point. I'm just seeing what the sequels took. Okay, so the first sequel took that. I'll reveal this next week. I'm just looking for my own interest. Okay, So the middle, without giving you the figures, the middle film was the biggest performer, which makes me wonder about a future for this series because they will have looked at the tape to the last one and thinking, oh, it's starting to drop away. But anyway, okay. Chris, have you done yours?
No, not yet. But I haven't got much to say other than what I've already said. Yeah, it's a very sort of well constructed film. Really well written. I think I find I'm more engaged with the characters rather than like the action, which I always think is a mark of a good film. John Lithgow's actually really good in it. I didn't mention that before. The only other thing I'll add is that you can tell in comparison to the film we covered last week, is you can tell there's actually a bit of a labour of love with this. There's a real sort of like respect for the series, and also like you can tell like the fans, they knew the shit, and they put almost like a labour of love into it in comparison to something with just a big budget and heart's not really in it. It's just like bash a film out. There we are. This feels like it's made by people who care.
Definitely. It's authored, and I'm sure at the very start of the process there may have been a touch more cynicism in that, like, we want to bring the series back, right? Okay, we can't do that again because that reimagining thing didn't work, so let's set it present day. There was probably a little bit of like almost cynical sketching out, but as soon as they've got into the detail, they've obviously fallen in love with the story that they're telling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, considering the mid credit thing or the is kind of almost like an afterthought.
Yeah,
it's not intending to say this is part of. Because I'm guessing at the time they didn't think it was necessarily going to be a trilogy.
No.
It's just kind of, let's do this film that's got healthy respect for the original films and that tells an actual story, and then let's do this thing and then have this little thing kind of seeded without that might play off if this film does well.
I think so, although it doesn't feel cynical to me, though. It could just be the one bit that might be studio.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where they go just like no, that's leaving it without. Come on, this is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Come on, let's seed. Let's actually just spell that out. I know we've implied there's a disease, but can we just see something that just makes it a bit clearer to audiences?
Yeah.
But then a lot of audiences are clueless, and I think we fall into that category, Chris.
What film are we talking about again?
We're talking about Rise of the Guardians with Chris Pine.
Oh yes.
Which is quite a good film.
I quite enjoyed that film,
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Another one,
I'll be honest.
That's another one that kind of bombed.
Didn't do anything, did
It
it? I've
did,
not
but
seen it, to be
I
fair.
quite enjoyed that. It was good for the ones over the 50th season.
Film.
Yeah.
Is that Zack Snyder?
No, that's the Owl one.
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, which one's that? Which one am I getting confused with?
This is the one where it's like you've got Santa Claus.
Easter Bunny.
Oh yes, sorry,
Bunny and
yeah.
Tooth Fairy and stuff. And
Yes,
Chris
I have
Pine is
seen it.
Jack Frost.
Yes, I've seen that.
Well, the animation on that film was really good. Like I remember going to see. I think it was when I was working for Filmoria, going to review that. I think it was very much like nearing completion. It was still very much in production, and they kind of screened a preview for certain press members. And even though it wasn't completely finished, I was like, wow, this looks amazing.
Yeah, I think it was produced by Del Toro. Guillermo, not obviously Benici.
Oh, that's why it looks so good.
Yeah, not literally by a bull.
No. Not Benicio, but.
I know, I do. I mind you, when I hear Del Toro, I immediately do think Guillermo, not Benicio. So yeah, okay. But that hasn't got me any further, Chris. I don't feel informed.
Yeah, I could do some information as well.
Yeah.
But
that's a pity we don't have any.
But I'm kind of shit with taking information. I could kind of like I could do some levity to it, come along with it.
So what you're saying is that if the facts are kind of very dry and quite serious, you probably won't absorb it. So
Yes.
what you think is better, that if people bring a sort of amount of enjoyability to it and life.
Yeah.
So facts that are somewhat fun.
Yes. I think that's right. Fun
Great
facts, you
idea.
could say.
Fun facts. Why have we never thought of that?
I don't know.
All right. Well, Charlie, you any good at that shit?
No.
Oh, Becca! Becca's there. Becca. Fun facts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dear, oh dear. Yeah, got some fun facts. Nobody died, so it's all right.
Yeah, you always announce it as fun facts and then say he died of cancer at the age
So
of
unfortunately,
56.
this actor died. Oh,
Yes,
not really a fun fact. Yeah, some really random fun facts this week about this film. So fun fact number 1, other actors nearly cast in the role of Will, as we mentioned. Former Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, and not former Spider-Man, Shia LaBeouf. Other actors who auditioned for the role of Dodge include Superman actor Brandon Routh and not Superman actor Cullen Lutz. And other actors considered for the role of Jacobs were Idris Elba,
So you
Javon
didn't
Halsey,
have
and Jamie
Brandon
Foxx.
Ralph?
Brandon Ruth Ralph, whatever his name is.
Or
Ruth Ralph.
or Malfoy from Harry Potter. They're two completely different.
They are,
Ralph
aren't they? They are
Malfoy.
two very diametrically opposed. I can't imagine like Superman. Yeah, he may be like really slimmed down for the role. And yeah, other actors considered for the role of Will's father include Christopher Walken and Robert Englund. Oh my god, that would have been terrifying. Fun fact number 2, this is one of the first films to use motion capture on location. Previously it was used or limited to like a studio setting with sort of fixed mocap cameras. Obviously Andy Serkis was no stranger to this. Ape inspired mocap, having previously performed in Peter Jackson's 2005 epic King Kong. Fun fact number 3, as we mentioned throughout the show, there are many references to the previous films. Tom Felton's character Dodge landed his name for Charlton Heston's astronaut crew members in the original film. The orangutan is named Maurice, after Maurice Evans, who played Dr. Zeus in the original movie. Obviously, his mother's Bright Eyes, a name given to Charlton Heston's character by Zira in the original film, among other nods. I won't list them all.
They went with Bright Eyes rather than Gun Freak then.
Yeah, rather than Gun Crazy. Although when they first
Knob
mentioned
end.
Bright Eyes, like in the original film, I kind of thought, oh, is that, Watership Down was like the first place my brain went to. I was like, no, wrong film. Fun fact number 4, the San Bruno shelter is a loose term, is based on the Black Beauty Ranch, apparently in Texas, where the famous chimp test subject, Nim Chimpsky, a pun on the name of the linguist Noam Chomsky, is based. Obviously, he argued that humans are wired to develop the language. Nim was meant as a subject, obviously, to challenge this theory that only humans have language. It was very controversial, but it's quite interesting. And then fun fact number 5, unfortunately I goofed it. It's not Sequoia National Park or Indian National Forest. They actually go to Muir Woods in the film, which I did know, but I forgot the name of. So apologies for that. It is Muir Woods. So you can visit there in San Francisco and see the mighty redwoods, the oldest being 1,200 years old. And the largest is 79 meters. Actually, 2 very distinct but related species, coastal redwoods, which are actually the tallest of all living things, and they can be found all along the California coast. And the other famous one is the giant sequoia, which grow only in the Sierra Nevada mountains. But yeah, if you ever go, not that you can do much foreign travel these days if you want to, but if you ever go to San Francisco, I can highly recommend a visit to Muir Woods. So not only have you got a fun fact, you've also got a travel recommendation.
There you are.
Also, never jump off the Golden Gate Bridge onto a helicopter.
Or onto a...
Or just don't
no.
jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. I think it's
No,
quite...
don't do that. Or you can jump
Yeah, I mean,
Christopher Walken.
we're not saying do it if it's a glider.
what you can do if you're a painter or decorator, you can sort of start at one end, paint it international orange, turn around, do it again, and it'll take you just as long.
Cool, that's fun.
Apparently, but it takes a long time.
I've also just looked at something that I found actually quite interesting. According to Rick Jaffa, who's one of the writers, the code name for the Alts 112 was supposed to be RT 112, which is like the running time of the original Planet of the Apes, 112 minutes.
Oh my
but
gosh,
then they
didn't know
changed
that.
it. Yeah.
So
That was a fun fact.
Chris's fun fact is something nearly happened.
Yes. Yes.
No fruit. Fact this time.
But that random number is actually.
You might get further away from a fact each time. So your fun fact next week will be. Your fun fact next week will be. Imagine Michael Jackson was in this.
I like to think it. I like to think it was more fun than factage on balance. But
I think to be fair, Becca went very fact heavy today, and I think you've gone for the sort of more entertainment portion of the sort of.
Yeah, I've done the facts. Chris brings the fun.
Yeah, and I just sit here and do fuck all really.
And Dave and Charlie can adjudicate.
And we both confirmed that was fun, folks.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
fun.
As for social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
you can find me at Cinetronics. You can also find all the audio episodes at cinetronics.co.uk.
Find me at Films on Wax on Twitter.
And you can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. And you can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay. But wherever you like to find us, please don't forget to rate us, review us, like us, and share us across social media. Thank you.
Okay. So we're into a double from the guy who's going to give us a new Batman film in the next 18 months or so, which means Becca.
Do you expect us to talk will return with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?